Welcome back to the pre-October October reviews. Today we're going back to the early 1950s to take a look at one of the first Beings from Another World movies. 1951's The Thing from Another World. The Thing from Another World is considered one of the all-time sci-fi classics. It was served as a key influential film for such directors as Ridley Scott, John Frankenheimer, Tobe Hooper, and the man who would later remake said movie as well as make my all-time favorite film, John Carpenter. John Carpenter's The Thing, as I've said a few times in the past, is my all-time favorite film, and I'm getting a bit close to my 100th episode, and I decided a while back that I want my 100th episode to be on John Carpenter's The Thing, so I thought I should review the original, and what better time than the spooky season, or a little pre-spooky season. The original The Thing is a very good movie. It's pretty well made, and for a film of the 1950s it has, I'd say, some pretty interesting and pretty well done dialogue scenes, and has a good aura of suspense, and the build up to the reveal of the thing itself is extremely well paced and put together, and it has some pretty good themes of the Army or Air Force versus scientists. A pretty early film to use this trope, so I think it can get a little bit of pass from the cynics of today. This movie, I wouldn't say it's necessarily scary for me and most modern audiences, but it's very suspenseful. It has a good chilling atmosphere to it, and the theme of do they kill the thing, or do they try to communicate and make peace with it? It's a very good storyline, and the story, before I forget to give all the details, is a group of scientists in the North Pole have picked up something that crashed, and they call in the Army for assistance. And together they discover that what crashed into the ice is a flying saucer. And they try to get it out, but accidentally end up destroying the whole thing. But one thing did survive: an alien. And they take this alien that appears to be frozen in a block of ice, take it back to their Arctic base, and try to figure out what to do with it from there. Do they thaw it out? Do they study it? Do they destroy it? All very interesting questions that have been done in countless movies. Some movies do this storyline very well, others have done it not so well, kind of lazily, or not much thought was put into certain details. But this film, it's funny. The original films to do some things that people see as overused tropes today usually do them the best, because the originals, and when it's fresh there's just something special about it. But the thing then thaws out of the ice, and once it's freed, it's still alive, and also it goes on a apparently unstoppable rampage. And the more the scientists and the Army try to study what they can find of the thing, they find that the alien has a very interesting body structure. And they handle this very well. Like, the writing and the acting in this movie is phenomenally good, and takes ideas that would sound really stupid, really retarded in the hands of someone who didn't know how to handle it very well, and they make it work. They find a severed piece of the thing's body, and after studying it for a while they find out that it can survive on its own, separate from the host. And also that the thing's body has as they put it, an almost...
It sounds like you're trying to describe a vegetable.
I am. Are you getting all of this?
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Quiet, mister. You know, Doctor, that could be why the bullets fired by Sergeant Barnes had no seeming effect.
That's right.
Merely holes drilled into vegetable matter.
It sounds like, well, just as though you're describing some form of super carrot.
That's nearly right, Mr. Scott.
Like they try shooting it with machine guns and it doesn't stop it. And they find that it has no blood. And you harm it, it simply regrows. So that becomes a big theme of how do they kill it? The army, that's their biggest question. The scientists, once again, part of the scientists group, they think that they should be cautious. Others want to study it, but are like, fuck caution. And some of them, it's hard to say, like, it's interesting to see kind of a breakdown of these groups, where the scientists and the Air Force people are very separate. Like, they work together at first, but as the film goes on, they become very divided. But most of the scientists, upon seeing just how dangerous and unpredictable, as they say, the thing is, they realize it would be in all their best interest if they killed it. And the fight to take down the thing and subdue it is most of the second half of the film, and it's just a non-stop thrill ride from the middle to the end. And the first half of the movie, which is all like build up to them both discovering the thing and bringing it back to the base, is also very well done. Like, the movie does not overuse the creature of the title, and there's some movies like Candyman where I feel like the character of the title did not get enough screen time. Like, they showed him and it was cool, but in Candyman's case, I feel like the movie didn't need to be named after the character due to how little he appeared. The Thing from Another World, this is a case where they name it after the monster of the title and they don't show it excessively, and I feel it works. The film techniques they use to conceal the thing are very impressive, and one of the reasons they don't show the thing in very clear view for most of the film is, well, they were a low-budget-ish movie for its time. They felt like the makeup would not hold up to close-up shots, and they also kept the lighting to a minimum, which in a way gives it kind of an eerie look. I mean, we do see it in a kind of clear view from a distance near the end. And yeah, it does look a little silly, but due to black and white, like I said before in the Space Mutiny review I did with my cousin Nick, the black and white is able to make it look a little less silly. The scientist, the main scientist, keeps saying how the thing is both strong and intelligent, and one scientist is convinced that the thing is even more intelligent than they themselves. Questionable, like, could be the scientist just getting his head all riled up. It's hard to say. And I wouldn't say the movie is too deep as far as certain themes, or I'm pretty sure this is not a philosophical type movie. There are some themes there, like what is right, but they don't overdo it. They keep it at just the right levels. The Thing from Another World was directed by Christian Nyby, N-Y-B-Y, and it was more famously produced by the great Howard Hawks, who, for anyone who doesn't know, was the director of Bringing Up Baby, Sergeant York, Rio Bravo, and many more classics. And there's actually some debate as to whether or not Howard Hawks actually directed the film just uncredited, or if Hawks and Nyby co-directed, and Neevy just got the main credit. It's impossible to say. There are so many stories about who was the director, who directed more. Either way, the direction here is pretty solid, as I said. The build-up and the suspense, and the actors are, for the most part, directed very well. And the movie was based on a short story called Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. And there are differences. I haven't read the short story, and all I can go on is what I know from the original and the John Carpenter remake. And according to many people and what I've read my own research, the Carpenter version is apparently the more somewhat loyal version. Apparently from the story, supposed to be a shapeshifter, which was incorporated more in Carpenter's version. And originally they wanted to do that for the 1951 version, but budget and 1950s, gotta work with what you have. So they went with making the Thing just a single lone alien. And as lone monsters go, the Thing, as I said, is very well done and used at just enough paces, and you feel like you didn't get too little and you didn't get too much. And the screenplay was written by Charles Lederer, and it's claimed that there was some uncredited writing by Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht, H-E-C-T. He's also an Oscar winner. And the music, which is very 50s, it has the orchestral feel, but there's a little almost machine-like quality or sound to it. It's done by Dmitry Tiomkin. He did an extremely good job. As I've always said, there are some exceptions. There are some cases where it works without it, but I will say, once again, and will continue to say, one of the key elements to a well-done horror film is its music scoring, and I'd say Dmitry did a fucking good job. And of course, with a 1950s monster sci-fi horror film, you gotta have makeup and special effects. The makeup was done by Lee Greenway, and the special effects done by Donald Stewart. S-T-E-W-A-R-D. Might have sounded like Stewart. And very interesting for a 1950s movie. The opening credits does not feature any names of the film's cast. And I guess that is a little unusual even today, but it was very different for its time. And the movie was released by a few studios, I think. RKO Studios, or I don't remember if there's a studio in there, but RKO, a classic movie company. And it's one of the only two films released through Howard Hawks' own production company that I think went under, Winchester Pictures Corporation. And of course, we get the opening title sequence, which was so awesome that John Carpenter had to recreate it for his movie, where we see the whole screen just burning up, and we get this almost jagged looking text saying, "The Thing." This movie has a pretty big cast of people who probably weren't that well known at the time, and the top billed actress in the movie is Margaret Sheridan as Nikki Nicholson, original, one of the scientists at the Arctic base, and the main Air Force character is Patrick Hendry, played by Kenneth Tobe. Kenneth Tobe does a pretty good job. He leads the film very well. Like, there's no true, I feel... If anybody's a main character in this film, it's him, but even then, the whole cast kind of works together. Like, without the others, no real character can carry the film on their own. And the character of Patrick Hendry, the characters are not too complicated, but there's enough there that they're not two-dimensional. And you get the gist. Guy in the Air Force, follows orders, but he's got a fun side and doesn't want things to get too complicated, and he's likable. The Nikki Nicholson character, I'm actually surprised they gave Margaret Sheridan top billing. Maybe she was big at the time, but this character, she's just there to be the generic love interest, and I'd say the biggest fault with the film, like the one thing that really hurts its flow or cred, is the generic, unnecessary romantic subplot. I mean, the actors, I really buy their chemistry together at times, but so little of the film is devoted to their romance, these two characters, that it just doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I don't care that they apparently have feelings for each other, and at the end of the movie they're hinting at getting married, even though there hasn't been enough scenes for us to really see that how strong their relationship is, or for us, the audience, to connect with them. There was one scene with them being kind of romantic. Like I said, the chemistry's good, but so little is devoted, and just seems out of place that could never get into it. But there's one scene I kind of like I said that the dialogue is extremely well done, like conversations between characters is very interesting. Like, for a 1950s movie, you get a lot of scenes of many characters talking at once, many characters doing stuff while the two main people that are being focused on are talking. Kind of like how real conversations work. Like, you get two people talking, someone butts in, and they might be heard or they might not, and they may acknowledge them, but only briefly. While two characters are talking, someone in the corner is maybe lighting a cigarette or looking at something or going over something. It feels very real. Like, they're very subtle touches, and they work pretty well. And even though it's the 1950s and nobody can swear, they do make their conversations feel pretty realistic, like as realistic as you can get in an alien sci-fi movie. But they feel like real people. Anyway, I ramble a lot. The only scene between Nikki and Patrick that I still kind of enjoy to watch is the scene where they're having kind of a cute couples game where he tells her to tie him up and he has his hands behind his back at a chair, and she's giving him samples of strong alcohol. There's not much to it, like it's not at all extreme, but I just can't help but sit here and smirk thinking 1950s bondage. My favorite character by far is Ned Scott, a newspaper guy. Yes, there's a newspaper reporter in here, but this guy actually fits in, and beyond being a obsessive news guy, he actually does do a lot to help out. And one of my favorite moments with the Ned Scott character is when Captain Hendry looks at him and says, "You better comb your hair." And Scott, who's completely bald around here to here, goes, "What hair?" I just thought it was funny. Like, it feels like a joke that somebody would make today. And, I mean, yeah, there were bald jokes in the 50s, but that felt like a very timeless bald joke. I just liked it. yeah, he's a fun guy, and he has a few annoying moments, but necessary, I guess, annoying moments. And like I said, everybody in this film, they talk over each other constantly, which happens a lot in real life. And while it's annoying in real life too. So I guess they succeeded in making realistic conversations. There are so many characters here that it's hard to remember who was who and to really rank each actor's performances. So I'm only going to go into one more character. The main scientist, who more or less is the human antagonist of the story. Like, I know there's the Thing, so you think, why should there be a human antagonist? But I guess he's necessary to make a point. This character is Dr. Arthur Carrington, who, upon finding the Thing, becomes obsessed with studying it. And when they find out it's alive after coming out of the ice block they got it in, he becomes obsessed with trying to communicate with it. And he pretty much endangers the lives of everybody at the base. Some people even die due to how obsessed he is at catching it alive. And he makes the argument that it's for science, it has to be for science. Our lives are meaningless, it's what we can discover that matters. The character, I guess, comes a little stupid at the end, but it's handled very well. And you can kind of see how this obsession would drive him to make decisions you think someone as smart as him would be above resorting to. I'm not a scientist, so maybe others see this kind of thinking or decision making differently than me, but that's just what I think. Just, science is one thing, but if your lives are in danger, then just kill the monster. And because I believe in giving credit, other characters in the film are Lieutenant Eddie Dykes, played by James Young, Crew Chief Bob, played by Drewy Martin, Lieutenant Ken Erickson, played by Robert Nichols, Corporal Barnes, played by William Self, Dr. Stern, played by Edward Franz, and Mrs. Chapman, played by Sally Creighton. As I said, the whole cast has to work together and they all have to share, because I don't think the film would have been as strong if it hadn't been that way. And last but not least, the actor who played the Thing itself. This might surprise people who are fans of 1960s television or classic television in general. Or maybe it won't, because they probably might have done some research on this actor. The Thing, the monster of the title, is played by none other than James Arness. That's right, Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke. I believe The Thing was one of his first and, by the end, one of his few theatrical roles. James Arness fit the build for the character. The Thing is supposed to be like 8 feet tall, and Arness was not that tall, but he was a very tall man, and I believe he was kind of embarrassed by this role because he probably thought of himself as a real actor. And I guess playing a giant alien is not exactly what he would think of as his defining character. Especially considering that the character is only in a few parts of the film. And I read that James Arness was reportedly so embarrassed by his role that he didn't attend the premiere. And because I just love mentioning behind the scenes stuff, there's a scene where the Air Force people and one or two of the scientists have the Thing right outside one of their rooms, and knowing that bullets can't stop it, they come up with the idea of, what if they burned it? So, dimming the lights, the thing comes in, and they douse the thing in part of the room with kerosene and set it on fire. And this is still a very impressive stunt scene, and it's believed by many to be the first full body burn accomplished by a stuntman. The scene was acted by veteran stuntman Tom Steele. Working with fire is very dangerous, as you don't need to be a genius to figure that out, but this was a very dangerous stunt that really could have killed Tom Steele at the time. The most famous scene from the film, which John Carpenter featured a clip from in Halloween, is a scene where the scientists are finding the saucer after it crashed, and curious as to how big it is, they have everyone spread out over the ice, looking down at the saucer through the ice and stop when they reach the end of it. And as they spread out, they then discover that, yeah, it's circular. And they're like, wow.
It's almost... yeah. Almost perfect. It is.
And the fun fact is, that scene, although it's set at the North Pole, was actually filmed outdoors at a ranch in 100-degree weather. Fake snow, I guess, and seeing as they're all wearing winter coats, I'm like, God damn, that must have been fucking intense. Shit. As I said earlier, the film is not terribly frightening, but there are some very effective jump scares in this movie, which I'll get into right now. The first time we ever get a almost clear view of the thing is when Captain Hendry leads his men, and they are going to go into the greenhouse room where they grow vegetables for food. And seeing how the thing is a vegetable being, they open the door, and there he is, and reacting realistically, they just slam it shut almost right away. So it's only a brief look, but it is a good shock moment. And earlier in the film, the scientists are investigating the green room, and they find evidence early on that the thing was there. And as I said, the main scientist, Dr. Carrington, obsessed with trying to study and talk to it, doesn't tell the Air Force. And while in the green room, they see some weird gel left by the thing on this crate. And opening it, this would shock people today, out pops a dead dog, which they find has been drained of its blood. Not only is the thing a little bit of a vegetable and feeds off the vegetable growing room, but it also can regenerate through the blood of anything it comes into contact with. I guess this is also an early space vampire movie. Once again, you're able to take it more seriously than these kind of films usually can be taken. But the dead dog, when it pops out, just, man, if you're a dog lover, this scene is going to just make you go, oh. At the end of the film, since we're in the spoiler area, the scientists, most of them anyway, come to their senses and work with the Air Force to find a way to trap and subdue and possibly kill the thing. They set up like an electric trap for it, a metal everywhere with a strong current, and Dr. Carrington, making one last futile attempt, runs up to the thing and tries to talk to it, saying,
Listen, I'm your friend. Look, I have no weapons. I'm your Father, they'll kill you. They think you mean to harm us.
And showing just how this thinking has fucked him up in here. He just approaches it, and the thing, who is not interested, just slams him behind him, which is kind of satisfying to watch.
Use that intelligence. Look at me and know what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not your enemy. I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist who's trying...
And it makes its way towards the Air Force guys, and they flip the switch, and the electricity, which admittedly looks pretty bad as far as the animating effects, but still a pretty good scene. They shock and burn, electrocute the thing, and the electricity burns cause the thing to, I guess, shrink in on itself, like a rotted fruit or vegetable would. And it becomes shrunk down to pretty much this big from being 8 feet tall. And for the shot of it as being very tiny as it shrunks down, the thing was then played by Billy Crudup, a dwarf actor who many people would probably know best as Mordecai from Clint Eastwood's High Plains Drifter. And after it shrunk, the scientists and the army gather together, take the remains, and Ned Scott finally is able to report to the world what has happened. And the film ends on, I guess, a little corny 50s dialogue, but also pretty well done, pretty eerie sounding, where he says, after reporting to the world that a flying saucer and an alien have landed on Earth, he says, and this is the line that closes the film, "Watch the skies. Whatever you do, keep watching the skies." And roll credits. The Thing from Another World is a classic of its genre. I think it's very good, but it doesn't hold a light to the remake by John Carpenter, which I can't put into words right now, just how much I love. All I can say is, this is a very well done 1950s film. It's not perfect, but it's very good, and if you like classic films, you like 1950s sci-fi, this will be one of the best examples to watch. And if I had to give it a rating out of 10, I would give it 7.8. Few faults, but overall it's a pretty solid movie, and I will see you next week, and we will get these reviews done properly in the actual month of October.